Hey guys, so Zhumulanga, better known as Mount Everest, is the highest point on the Earth, whose peak is 29,031.7 feet high. It of course attracts the attention from professional mountain climbers, as well as simple enthusiasts. And Everest has been summited by daring climbers many times, but that doesn't lessen its majesty. The feeling you experience looking out from the tall mountain at the world below is hard to describe in words. It can only be experienced. So why do so many people spend tons of money to climb the highest point in the world? What difficulties wait for them? And where is that point where the risk to stay there forever sharply rises, where your guide and your friends will probably just leave you behind? We'll answer these questions and more in today's video. So the mountain has three names, but the most popular is Everest. The mountain received this name in 1865 in honor of surveyor Sir George Everest, who was the first to determine the mountain's location and height. Tibetans call the mountain Zhumulanga, meaning Holy Mother, and the Nepalese call it Sagarmatha, meaning the head in the great blue sky. They both consider the mountain holy, and they're not pleased with the constant tourists, but they also make good money leading them to the top. Both experienced climbers and amateurs who simply want to set a record go to climb to the top. Now, we want to make sure to mention that climbing Everest is one of the most expensive tourist activities you could ever do. Check this, the average cost for the trip is at least $40,000 to $70,000. That makes a week at Disney look a lot better, right? But if someone is destined to conquer Everest, someone else will just pay to start without seeing the top. Only about 50% of climbers make it to the top, and the rest have to head back down. Many climbers frequently recognize the risk of not returning, so each attempt is accompanied with doubts of, will I see my friends or family ever again? So those that have climbed it more than once or twice compare Everest to space or to the bottom of the ocean floor. Because to get to the top, you actually need to use oxygen canisters, since the height of over 5 miles is where this so-called dead zone begins. That's where you start suffocating due to lack of oxygen, and your cells start dying one after another. Samples taken from 4 climbers at 5 miles high showed that the level of oxygen in their blood was 4 times lower than normal. Those numbers are usually seen in patients before they died. That's what Dr. Jeremy Windsor, who studied the samples, said. He personally climbed Everest in 2007. Now, American climber David Brashears compared that high to running while having to breathe through a straw. It's worth remembering that the route to the base camp at a height of 3.3 miles and the climbing will take about 3 months. The human body isn't equipped to naturally handle such extreme conditions, so there are often times where climbers have cerebral and pulmonary edemas. To maintain the necessary oxygen levels, the heart starts beating faster and can reach 140 beats per minute. This sharply increases the risk of a stroke or heart attack. Now, additionally, the dead zone hides other dangers like losing your vision, frostbite, or falling from sudden exhaustion. Another difficulty is that the wind at the top of Everest can reach speeds of 450 miles per hour, similar to a strong hurricane. The scariest thing that can happen is the so-called alpine psychosis. That's where you lose your sense of reality and forget where you are and start experiencing auditory and visual hallucinations. There are known cases when climbers started taking their clothes off. Even though the temperature at the top of Everest is -4 to -22 degrees Fahrenheit, and they may even talk to imaginary friends. Then there are those who stay sane in the dead zone, but their bodies just start failing. There's problems with sleeping. It gets hard to fall asleep, and equally hard to wake up. Muscles atrophy, and people quickly lose weight. Fatigue and poor vision increase the risk of falling. The inability to clearly think and make decisions is threatening because a climber might easily go off the path, forget to secure their safety rope, or not recognize their low oxygen supply. Experienced climbers say that people can clearly feel the balance between life and death that high, and the body starts experiencing smells, seeing colors, and even understanding time differently. So the first climb was completed on May 29, 1953 by New Zealander Edmund Hillary and his guide Tenzing Norgay. They spent just 15 minutes at the top. In that time, Hillary took a picture of Norgay, his guide, called a Sherpa, who left some chocolate in the snow as a gift to the gods, and Hillary planted a flag. There is no picture of Hillary on top of Everest, unfortunately, because, as he says, Tenzing wasn't able to use a camera. On June 6, 1953, Hillary was awarded the title of Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire, and his Sherpa Norgay was known as Snow Tiger. By the way, the Sherpas are genetically adapted to the height. They live at heights of about 2.5 miles, and they do all the difficult work and carry food and equipment in the groups. So if climbers are so serious about making it to the top, and then having that experience with others, why do they leave the bodies of their dead friends who didn't make it to the top behind? Or are the morals of Earth different than those on the mountain? So let's dig into this a little bit. So after people first reached the top in 1953, Everest had already received payment for such an expedition in the lives of over 300 people. Several climbers saw their friends still alive but kept moving on since there was nothing they could do to help. There's a point of no return on Everest. It's at about 4.9 miles high. After that, it's not possible to help a dying climber if they can't move on their own. The full equipment of warm clothes and shoes and on top of someone's normal weight is at least 200 pounds, making it unrealistic to take someone down alone, and if you try to do it in a group of 2 or 3, then you'll be too wide for the path. So that doesn't mean these climbers are heartless, it's just that there are conditions where it's impossible to help. When climbing, the amount of oxygen gets cut down to just 1/3, so the lack of oxygen makes the body start working slower. Even if a physically strong person could easily save a few people at once on the ground, they can't on the mountain because of the oxygen. Climbers say that the tanks everyone carries contains a certain amount of oxygen, and if you try to help someone, it gets spent much faster. That would cause 2 people to die instead of 1. Now, if a climber has a normal amount of oxygen and it's warm enough, then they'll try to help. But in other conditions, the most they can do is contact the base camp. Besides that, the bodies of the dead are quickly frozen by the climate, so even if you try to take them down, you'll need a huge amount of time, and the climbers aren't going up to go back down halfway. The bodies of the climbers who couldn't make it to the top of Everest or another mountain will always be in those mountains. That's the cost of the climb and realizing your dream. The ideas of camaraderie and mutual help have different meanings on the mountain than they do on the ground. The human desire to support and help each other is weakened in the mountains. And it's not because of morals, but because of oxygen, climate conditions, and endurance. The climbers are convinced that you are in 2 worlds at the top, as if you're between life and death. Those that made it to the top say that people climb Everest because it exists. Its existence is a challenge, and even though thousands have died on the way up, Everest hasn't gotten any shorter than it was 70 years ago, making it still a huge accomplishment. Each step towards the top is a victory. Some believe that the people that go to Everest do it because if you can climb and get to the top, then everything else in life will seem easy in comparison. Hey, that's all for today. Be sure to leave us a like and let me know in the comments if you would A, want to climb to the top of Everest, or B, sit at base camp and drink a bunch of hot cocoa. I definitely want to do B. And we'll see you again next time.